Part 55. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 541. In the guest room of Shen's villa. While covering the first jade box with his hand, Zhang Fengjai opened the second jade box next to it and found a green leaf in the jade box. Considering the spiritual ointment stored in the first jade box and Tao Jinjiang's status as an elite disciple of Danding sect, he did not despise the leaf in the jade box at all, and then carefully reached out to take the leaf. When Zhang Fengjai took out the jade box with the leaf pinched by his thumb and index finger, he couldn't help but feel surprised, and a hint of excitement immediately appeared on his face. In theory, a green leaf weighs only a few grams, and it can be easily blown away in one breath. But the leaf in the jade box weighs almost 300 grams, which is 6 taels, which is obviously not in line with the weight that the leaf should have. Therefore, he can be 100% sure that the green leaf is definitely a treasure. The color and shape are no different from ordinary leaves, and there is no trace of spiritual fluctuation. Looking at the leaf pinched by his fingers, Zhang Fengjai's original excitement is gradually replaced by hesitation. Because he couldn't judge the origin and efficacy of the leaves by naked eye observation and sensing, he thought of using violent means to test the quality of the leaves. But he was worried that using violent means would destroy the leaves that were definitely treasures. Zhang Fengjai, who couldn't make a decision for a long time, gradually felt a little irritable. Finally, after a fierce look flashed in his eyes, he pinched the leaves with his thumbs and index fingers, and then pulled them to the side. As a result, he couldn't help but be amazed. Because the seemingly fragile leaves couldn't be torn apart directly. You know, even if he didn't use the gray energy of the Danshan and the physical strength of steel and iron bones, the physical body tempered by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, gray energy and body refining techniques, the tearing force was enough to tear apart the steel and iron bars. After taking a deep breath and calming the expectations in his heart, he began to gradually mobilize the physical strength of steel and iron bones to increase the tearing force. However, even after the physical strength he mobilized reached the peak of the great success, the emerald green leaves were still not torn apart, which forced him to continue to mobilize the gray energy in his Danshan and continue to increase the tearing force. But in the end, the emerald green leaves were still intact. Looking at the emerald green leaves pinched by his fingers, Zhang Fengjai felt a little disappointed, but when he thought of the unusual weight of the leaves and the unimaginable toughness, which was enough to prove that it was a rare treasure, his disappointment was instantly replaced by excitement and expectation. After putting the emerald green leaves back into the jade box, he picked up the 12 brand new talismans and looked at them one by one. He found that they were not only some common exorcism talismans, evil-breaking talismans, and sealing talismans, but also that their quality and power were far inferior to the talismans he made himself, so he decided to give all these talismans to Zhuang Jian. Finally, his eyes fell on the books with slightly old color and slightly damaged covers. Fortunately, the damaged parts of the cover were all at the corners, and did not affect the 3 big characters in the middle of the cover at all. Thunder Palm. Seeing the 3 big characters of Thunder Palm on the cover, Zhang Fengjai felt a vague sense of familiarity in his heart. He always felt that he seemed to have seen or heard of the set of palm techniques somewhere before. But he couldn't remember it for a moment. Reaching out to pick up the secret book of Thunder Palm, after opening the cover of the secret book, a very clear palm painting, combined with a very mysterious palm technique formula, split the mind like a lightning, a silent and sealed picture. 5 years ago, when he was 13 years old, there was a sudden strong wind and thunder above the Rat Mountain, which was originally clear and blue. At that time, he was in the offering pavilion of the Taoist temple, offering incense to the statue of the 3 pure ones. Since it was a hot summer with frequent thunderstorms, he didn't pay attention to the sudden change in the weather in Shushan. However, just as he was about to leave the worship pavilion and go to the sutra pavilion to read various books after paying his respects, a golden palm suddenly fell from the sky and slapped him. Although a sword energy appeared out of thin air and cut off the attack of the golden palm in time, he was eventually stunned by the palm wind due to the aftermath of the palm wind and his own low strength, and he completely forgot about being attacked by the golden palm afterwards. At this moment, with the unsealing of the memory, the golden palm recalled in his mind was simply the same as the palm depicted in the secret book. Of course, except for the authenticity and size ratio. When he recalled the golden palm that fell from the sky, which was as terrifying as a punishment from heaven, he had a very strong premonition in his heart that the lightning palm in his hand might be the secret book of practicing the golden palm. Recalling the sword energy that appeared out of thin air, the powerful attack power it displayed, and the familiar breath it exuded, he knew that his third grandfather was not only a powerful person in the Jindan realm, but also not an ordinary Jindan master. After taking a deep breath and calming down his excitement, he reached out to close the cover of the Xian Leiju, and then took out the yin-yang crystal stone he got from the abandoned flour mill. Reaching out to peel off the seal on the yin-yang crystal stone, he slowly closed his eyes with his hands around the yin-yang crystal stone, and then let the Hunyuan taking heart method run automatically and uncontrollably, letting the gray energy in the danshan boil. As the yin and yang energy in the yin and yang crystal entered the body along the meridians of the arm and then merged into the gray energy of the danshan, Zhang Fengjai suddenly felt a deafening roar in his sea of consciousness. Boom! Accompanied by the roar, the Hunyuan taking heart method, which was reduced to 138 words, appeared out of thin air in the sea of consciousness. Then, after the order of the 138 words was forcibly disrupted, it began to rotate rapidly, and then some simpler fonts, because they could not withstand the force of rotation, broke into pieces and turned into a gray energy. As the speed of rotation became faster and faster, more and more fonts began to break into pieces because they could not withstand the force of rotation. When the last 9 Tao characters were broken at the same time, the rotating fonts were completely replaced by gray energy. But at this moment, the gray energy suddenly stopped rotating, and then began to rotate in the opposite direction, and waves of gray energy gradually constructed fonts. 1 word. 3 words. 10 words. When the number of characters appearing in the air in the sea of consciousness reached 138, the counter-rotating gray energy was not completely consumed, but 1/3 of it remained. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 542. In the guest room of the Shen family villa. 138 characters. 140 characters. 150 characters. When the number of characters in the sea of consciousness reached 184, the rotating gray energy had been completely consumed. Then, the 184 characters condensed by the gray energy began to be quickly rearranged. After more than a minute of rearrangement, a brand new Hunyuan taking heart method quickly merged into the soul of the sea of consciousness, and at the same time, the boiling gray energy in the danshan gradually calmed down. After slowly opening his eyes, Zhang Fengjai looked down at the yin-yang crystal in his hand and found that the yin-yang crystal, which was originally the size of a baby's fist, had only shrunk by a circle, and the yin-yang energy contained in the crystal had only been consumed by a quarter. A trace of regret flashed in his eyes. If he had known that it would only take less than a quarter of the yin-yang crystal to make up for the defects of the Hunyuan taking heart method, he should have tried every means to keep Shangguan's Heining. After the defects of the mental method were fully made up, he would give her the remaining yin-yang crystals, and there would be no need to reveal 4 life-saving trump cards to force her to leave, which would cause a trace of resentment between them. But there is no regret medicine in the world. Since the resentment between each other has already occurred, they can only accept it calmly and find ways to make up for it. So, after calming down the regretful emotions in his heart and putting away the yin-yang crystals that had shrunk a circle, he quickly closed his eyes and began to read and comprehend the brand new Hunyuan taking mental method that had been integrated into his soul. The time for reading and comprehending was not very long, only 5 or 6 minutes. Zhang Fengjai, who opened his eyes again, showed an excitement that was difficult to suppress. Because after reading and comprehending word by word just now, he knew that his speculation was not wrong. The yin-yang qi contained in the yin-yang crystals has indeed made up for the key part of the Hunyuan taking mental method that is missing about the state of mind, which allows him to improve his strength as he pleases in the future, and no longer have to worry about the danger of going astray. But the only regret is that the rearranged Hunyuan taking heart method is still incomplete with only the first half of the heart method, which can only help him cultivate to the peak of the 9th level of the golden core. Fortunately, when he chose the incomplete Hunyuan taking heart method as the foundation building heart method for his practice, he had already made mental preparations. At the same time, after the second change of the heart method, he had a very strong feeling in his heart. It feels that the missing second half of the Hunyuan taking heart method can be supplemented little by little through the absorption and fusion of some special energy, and perhaps through the means of recondensation and sorting. Therefore, the regretful emotion only flashed by, and the heart was completely calm in an instant. Then, he closed his eyes again, ran the new Hunyuan taking heart method, and began to gather the Yinsha energy within 100 meters of the villa. With the help of the process of strength improvement, he continued to test whether the heart method still had hidden dangers that had not been discovered just now. In the autopsy room of the Ningji City Criminal Police Brigade, Director Yang, the deceased is a young woman, 1.66 meters tall, weighing 102 kilograms, and about 16 or 17 years old. Looking at a female corpse lying on the dissection bed, listening to the forensic doctor telling some of the characteristics and causes of death of the deceased, Yang Qiushan's face gradually became solemn. The specific time of death of the deceased was between 5 and 6 this morning. The cause of death was excessive blood loss in an instant, which eventually caused rapid organ failure and suffocation. Although the clothes of the deceased were messy when they were found, the clothes inside were intact and they did not suffer any insults. At the same time, after the instrument inspection just now, the deceased had no experience in that aspect before her death. Speaking of this, the sexy female forensic doctor wearing black fishnet stockings and a black tight skirt, a white coat and a white shirt, bent down and stretched out her hand to press the neck of the deceased to signal. Director Yang, look here. Because the two buttons on the white shirt were not fastened, the female forensic doctor directly showed the infinite beauty in the white shirt when she bent down and stretched out her hand. In particular, the black lace covering the two peaks added to the infinite temptation of the female forensic doctor, which made the three young criminal police standing in the autopsy room blush and lower their heads quickly. But they couldn't help but use the corner of their eyes to secretly peek, which caused their breathing to gradually become heavier. After taking a look at the female forensic doctor's tall breasts, and then looking down at her own two hills that were not flat but not prominent, Huang Yiwen's eyes showed a deep envy. Especially when she saw the embarrassing reactions of her three colleagues, her face was cashmere, and the envy in her eyes was instantly replaced by jealousy. The closest distance and the best angle allowed Yang Guozheng to enjoy the infinite beauty in the female forensic doctor's shirt. But his eyes just swept by, without any interest, and immediately cast a look at the female forensic doctor pointing out the wound that caused the death of the deceased. According to my examination just now, the cause of the deceased's excessive bleeding was the two wounds on her neck. The wound was about 3 mm in diameter and 2 cm deep, which pierced the deceased's aorta, eventually causing her to suffocate and die from excessive bleeding. After explaining this, the female medical examiner wearing a white mask showed a hint of hesitation in her eyes. Because according to her careful examination after the autopsy, she found that nearly 80% of the blood in the body of the deceased was lost through the two wounds on the neck within 10 seconds, which obviously violated the most basic medical common sense. According to the normal volume and speed of human blood flow, even if the head of the deceased was directly chopped off, it is impossible for all the blood in the body to flow out within 10 seconds. The characteristics of the female death in front of her are somewhat similar to the killing methods of vampires and zombies in the online novels she usually read. Whether it is Western vampires or Chinese zombies, they are all feudal superstitions. How can she use them as a reason to tell the deputy director of the Municipal Public Security Bureau? Therefore, she showed a look of hesitation in her eyes. However, what the female forensic doctor did not notice was that when she explained the wound on the neck of the deceased, Yang Guozheng, whose face was instantly gloomy, flashed a terrifying cold light in his eyes, and raised his head to wink at Huang Yiwen. Looking at the two wounds on the deceased's neck, Huang Yiwen, who also thought of the identity of the murderer, nodded, then quickly turned around and left the autopsy room and went to the corridor, then took out her mobile phone, found a very important number and called it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 543. In the guest room of the Shen family villa. Hu. After slowly exhaling the turbid air accumulated in his chest, Zhang Fengjai slowly opened his eyes, and a bright light flashed. Because after more than an hour of practice, he found that the reordered Hunyuan taking heart method not only had no hidden defects and hidden dangers, but also gathered Yinsha energy and converted gray energy at a speed that was at least several times faster than before the reordering of the heart method. In other words, the practice of more than an hour just now was almost equivalent to the practice results of the previous 5 or 6 hours. Since it was confirmed that the reordered Hunyuan taking heart method no longer had any defects and hidden dangers, then the next step was for him to improve his own cultivation and strength as he wished. After taking a deep breath and adjusting the excitement that emerged in his heart, Zhang Fengjai reached out and picked up the porcelain bottle containing Xianyuan Dan, then opened the cork and prepared to pour out Xianyuan Dan. But at this moment, the mobile phone in his pocket suddenly vibrated. He temporarily stopped pouring out Xianyuan Dan, then took out his mobile phone and took a look. When he saw the number displayed on the screen, it turned out to be Huang Yiwen, whom he had not contacted for a long time. He answered the phone with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Master Zhang, hello, I am Huang Yiwen from the Criminal Police Team 2. Officer Huang, there is no need to be so polite between you and me, just say whatever you want to say. Master Zhang, this is what happened. The call with Huang Yiwen was not very long, only about a minute. When Zhang Fengjai hung up the phone, a terrifying cold light flashed in his eyes. According to Huang Yiwen's introduction to the characteristics of the female corpse's death, he knew that the murderer was most likely either a Western vampire or an Eastern zombie. Considering that Baron Alex, Count Garcia, and Adrian, who was at the peak of the Count realm, among the Western vampires, had been defeated by him one after another, I am afraid that they would not dare to easily set foot in Ningji City in the short term. Even if they were determined to get involved in Ningji City, they would act cautiously and dare not reveal any whereabouts, let alone leave behind a female corpse that exposed the identity of a vampire. At the same time, he had never had any intersection with Tao Jingyang of Danding sect, and there was no hatred between them. There was probably only one reason why the other party monitored and followed him from the beginning, that is, it must be instructed by the mastermind, or entrusted and traded. Considering the transmission spell that Zhao Zulin secretly crushed before his death, he suspected that the mastermind was most likely the core disciple of Lishan sect who was responsible for the training of disciples in Dongshan province. Therefore, he guessed that the murderer of the young female corpse found by Yang Guozheng was the zombie refined by the core disciple of Lishan sect. Of course, as for whether the previous guess is correct, you only need to go to the autopsy room of the Criminal Police Brigade to see it. Thinking of this, Zhang Fengjai stood up and put away the porcelain bottle and jade box in front of him, then went to the bedroom to say something to Zhuang Jian, and then left the villa and took a taxi to the Municipal Public Security Bureau. In the autopsy room of the Municipal Criminal Police Brigade. After a brief greeting with Yang Guozheng and Huang Yiwen, Zhang Fengjai walked directly to the dissection bed, ignoring the female forensic doctor with a puzzled look in her eyes, and then stretched out his hand to press on the neck of the corpse, carefully observing it through naked eye observation and pulse diagnosis. As the observation continued to deepen, his face became more and more solemn. The fangs of Western vampires are sharp, while the fangs of Eastern zombies are thick and short. Judging from the width and depth of the wound of the deceased, the murderer is obviously a zombie from the East. But judging from the speed of blood loss from the corpse, the level of this zombie is between orange zombie and green zombie, which is equivalent to the peak limit of the 9th level of the Foundation building period, and is only a hair's breadth away from the virtual pill realm. This level of zombie is no longer something that the three terrifying demonic powers in the heart space can deal with, and can only use the Black Thunder Talisman and the Mountain Shaking Talisman that are enough to kill the virtual pill strongman. But considering that the core disciples of Lashan sect not only have a cultivation level of more than the 9th level of the Foundation building period, but also have more than one zombie in their hands, he is worried that the only two life-saving trump cards cannot achieve the effect of killing with one blow, and eventually put himself in a passive and dangerous situation. However, thinking that the time for the core disciples of Lashan sect to go down the mountain to train is not enough to refine zombies of this level, he doubts the origin of this zombie. Perhaps a zombie in the deep mountains and old forests accidentally broke into the city. Friend Zhang, can you confirm the true origin of the murderer? Seeing that Zhang Fengjai stood in front of the corpse for a long time without speaking, Yang Guozheng, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but ask worriedly. Yang Guoshan's questioning interrupted Zhang Fengjai's deep thinking. After taking a deep breath to suppress his inner worries and speculations, he nodded and replied. Director Yang, based on the width and depth of the deceased's wound, as well as the speed of blood loss in the body, the murderer should be our Chinese-specific zombie. Yang Guozheng was too worried to forget the existence of a female forensic doctor in the autopsy room. Zhang Fengjai mistakenly thought that the female forensic doctor was Yang Guoshan's confidant, and was someone who knew about supernatural phenomena like Huang Yiwen. Therefore, the reply without any concealment immediately aroused the strong dissatisfaction and questioning of the female forensic doctor. Director Yang, you are not only the deputy director of the Municipal Public Security Bureau, but also a staunch atheist. How can you let a charlatan who promotes feudal superstition intervene in the murder case of our criminal police team? When Yang Guozheng heard the dissatisfied questioning of the female forensic doctor, he suddenly realized his negligence. At the same time, after hearing her calling Zhang Fengjai a charlatan, his face suddenly changed and he quickly reminded her. Wenlin, this Zhang Xiao is not only a strange man, but also used his special ability to solve the female corpse case that happened on the bar street some time ago, so he is not the charlatan you said. Immediately afterwards, Yang Guozheng also began to defend the identity of the murderer revealed in Zhang Fengjai's reply just now. Wenlin, there are many things in this world that seem to be explained by scientific means, but in fact they are just a means for the top leaders to stabilize the people's hearts. After all, the incitement of demons and ghosts to the people's hearts will affect the stability and unity of society, and then impact the regime that Teju has established with great difficulty. Wenlin, who obviously did not believe Yang Guoshan's defense, flashed a sneer of contempt in her eyes. When she was about to continue questioning, the exclamation of the young man she thought was a charlatan suddenly rang in her ears. Fragrant words spread the breeze, and the thoughts of the scholars inspire Wenlin. The fact that you can quote the poems of Taya Kangong to name yourself means that Miss Wenlin is either from a scholarly family, or a master who is proficient in yin and yang and the 5 elements personally named you. But no matter which situation it is, it means that the elders of your family are people who believe in metaphysics and Confucianism. Otherwise, they would not have given you a name that complements the 5 elements. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 544. In the autopsy room of the City Criminal Police Brigade. After hearing Zhang Fengjai's praise, Wen Yian's eyes flashed with surprise. if the young charlatan in front of him knew the origin of his name because he was knowledgeable. Then, the saying that the name can complement the 5 elements of fate and the speculation of his origin are enough to show that he is not a charlatan who cheats and deceives. Because she is indeed from a family of scholars, and her name was also given by her grandfather, a master of Chinese studies. However, zombies are a kind of monster that is fictional and imagined in folk legends after all. How could they appear alive in the real world and actively attack humans? Therefore, Wen Lan, who is still full of doubts in her heart, intends to continue to question and refute the young man she still thinks is a charlatan in her own way. Oh! I don't know what fate I am missing, and how can Wen Yan's name complement the fate? People born in the middle night of the Zi hour in the year of Benjian are born without water and wood in their fate. Facing Wen Yan's test, Zhang Fengjai explained with a smile. The 3 dots of the word Lan represent water, and the door represents wood, which just makes up for the lack of water and wood in your fate. At the same time, the door is the traditional Chinese character Dong, and Dong represents purple air, which means purple air coming from the east. This means that on the day you were born, you were betrothed to the most powerful family in China as your wife. Seeing the shock on Wen Yan's face, Zhang Fengjai raised his mouth slightly with a hint of pride. Originally, according to his free-spirited personality, he would not have paid any attention to Wen Yan's doubts, but when he mobilized the gray energy of Danshan to open the sky eye, intending to continue observing the wounds of the deceased, hoping to confirm the true level of the zombie through the remaining evil energy in the wounds of the deceased, he unexpectedly saw that Wen Lan was actually protected by a layer of rich purple air. Purple air is precious, demons and monsters do not approach, and evil spirits do not invade. If Wen Lan, who was protected by purple chi, was present when tracking and fighting the zombie whose strength was infinitely close to the virtual pill realm, he could use special means to extract purple chi, and then perform a secret method with power infinitely close to the virtual pill realm to directly injure and kill the powerful zombie. Therefore, he would use his physiognomy to prove himself, so as to gain Wen Yan's trust, and hope to get her full help when facing the powerful zombie or the core disciples of Lishan sect. Wen Lan, with a shocked look on his face, suddenly had an incredible look in his eyes. If the other party knew his exact date of birth, it was because Yang Guo's Hung had foresight and told him in advance. Then, except for a limited number of parties involved, no one knew about the marriage contract with the Xiao family, which had been passed down in the imperial capital for 100 years. How did the young man in front of him know about it? According to the physiognomy of men on the left and women on the right, the male and female palaces under your left eye are glowing red, while the male and female palaces under your right eye are dim. This means that the man who arranged the marriage is very satisfied and likes you, and is looking forward to marrying you one day earlier, but you are very disgusted with this marriage in your heart. Feeling that the means he just showed were not enough to bring Wen Lan a complete shock of conviction, Zhang Fengjai continued to prove his ability through the other party's physiognomy. If I am not mistaken, you went to the criminal police brigade of Ningji City to be a forensic doctor. In addition to your own preferences, you also want to avoid your fiancé. Who are you? Not only did he know about his engagement with the Xiao family, but he also knew the real reason why he was a forensic doctor. This made Wen Lan suspect that the other party was very likely sent by her parents to take her home. After all, she is already 24 years old this year, and has long reached the legal age for marriage, and has also passed the time agreed with the Xiao family to marry. My surname is Zhang, my name is Fengjai, my Taoist name is Kingxiu. I am a fortune teller, a feng shui master who is proficient in yin and yang and the 5 elements, and a demon catcher who is proficient in magic. After tidying up his clothes, Zhang Fengjai introduced himself again in a serious manner. If the identity Zhang Fengjai introduced just now is true, then he can know his experience and can explain it clearly. But for Wen Lan, who has received modern education, such magical things as fortune-telling and zombies are simply fairy tales, so she still can't believe what Zhang Fengjai said just now. Seeing the struggle in Wen Yan's eyes, Zhang Fengjai knew that the ability shown in words was not enough to destroy the scientific belief she had formed for more than 20 years. So, he planned to make the other party believe and accept the existence of zombies through the facts he saw with his own eyes. Miss Wenlin, I can track the exact location of the zombie through the evil breath left on the wound of the deceased. If you have the courage, or if you are not afraid of death, you can follow me to track down the existence of the zombie. No problem. As an excellent forensic doctor who often faces the bodies of different deceased people, Wenlin's courage is far better than that of ordinary people. At the same time, she also wants to verify whether the belief she has always adhered to is correct by witnessing it with her own eyes. So, she nodded and agreed to Zhang Fengjai's slightly provocative invitation without any hesitation. Seeing Wenlin, who readily agreed to her invitation, Zhang Fengjai, with a glimmer of pride in his eyes, took out 2 blank talisman papers from his sleeves, and used the grey energy of Danshan to draw a gathering talisman and a soul-guiding talisman out of thin air. Then, he used the evil gathering talisman to extract all the remaining evil breath from the wound of the deceased. Immediately afterwards, the evil repelling talisman automatically burned, and from the burning flames, there were faint roars. Whether it was Zhang Fengjai's method of drawing the talisman out of thin air, the flames formed by the talisman's automatic combustion, or the frightening roar coming from the flames, Wen Lan and the 3 young police officers were shocked. Lock the chi and the soul, and follow it for hundreds of miles. Ignoring the shocked look on Wen Yan's face, Zhang Fengjai activated the soul-attracting talisman and threw it towards the burning flames. Then he pinched his hands and recited a curse and shouted loudly. Along with Zhang Fengjai's loud shouts, the soul-attracting charm thrown into the flames was not only not ignited, but instead wrapped in burning flames and formed a sharp arrow, pointing directly to the east of the criminal police team. Seeing that the soul-attracting talisman had already made a move to lock the zombie, Zhang Fengjai, without any delay, stepped out of the anatomy room and gave instructions to Yang Guozheng, who stayed behind. Director Yang, this dead body infected with zombie poison has the ability to transform into zombies, so you need to completely cremate this dead body. At the same time, Wen Lan also quickly quickened his pace to catch up. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 545. The grey energy in the Danshan used to draw the soul-calling talisman has reached the peak of the 8th level of the foundation building period. The evil gathering talisman extracts the evil energy of zombies from the wounds of the dead, and its power has reached the limit of the peak of the 9th level of the foundation building period. The tracking speed formed by the superposition of the 2 energies is no less than that of the top sports cars. For Wen Lan, who is just an ordinary woman and wears high heels, it is a speed that she can't catch up with at all. If you use your mind to slow down the tracking speed of the soul-calling talisman in order to take care of Wen Yan's speed, then the evil energy of zombies extracted by the evil gathering talisman will be greatly consumed, and it may not be possible to successfully track the hiding place of the zombie in the end. Therefore, after leaving the office building of the criminal police team, Zhang Fengjai turned his head to look at Wen Lan, who was gritting her teeth and desperately chasing, but her speed was as slow as a snail, and he flashed to her side. "Miss Wen Lan, I'm offended." After apologizing, he directly hugged Wen Yan's waist, and then used the Qingfeng step to chase the soul-calling talisman with all his strength. Wearing sexy and bold clothes, not caring too much about the temptation of exposure, is just a means for Wenlin to relieve stress. After all, facing corpses of different causes of death frequently, the heavy psychological pressure brought by it is not something that ordinary people can imagine and understand. In fact, Wenlin is a very traditional and conservative woman in her bones. Not to mention the love between men and women, she has never done intimate hand-holding between opposite sexes. So, at the moment when Zhang Fengjai's strong and powerful arms embraced her waist, a feeling of tension, fear, powerlessness and helplessness made her body stiffen instantly, and she instinctively wanted to break free from the invasion of the arm. However, when she saw Zhang Fengjai running at full speed, as fast as a top sports car, the shock that instantly emerged in her heart made her temporarily forget to break free from the invasion of the other party's arms, and her eyes showed an incredible look. Even the Olympic sprint champion, Turbo, known as the Flying Man, only ran at a speed of 11 or 12 meters per second. Through her personal experience, she predicted that Zhang Fengjai's full-speed running speed would reach nearly 30 meters per second, which was completely beyond the limit that human physique could reach and endure. At this time, she vaguely believed in the existence of physiognomy and zombies. At this moment, she was no longer afraid of the other party's arms, the strong embrace of the waist, and no longer disgusted by the other party's palms, the unintentional touch of the tall breasts. Neither paying attention to Wen Yan's initial stiff reaction, nor noticing the shock on her face, Zhang Fengjai used the Qingfeng step to catch up with her at all costs while locking the soul-calling talisman with his mind. In less than 3 minutes, the soul-calling talisman, which had completely consumed its evil energy, finally stopped in front of the gate of Ningji Women and Children's Hospital. Stopping and letting go of Wen Yan's waist, Zhang Fengjai quickly stretched out his hand to call back the soul-calling talisman in the air, and after taking a look, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Since the corpse attacked by the zombies had been dead for more than 6 hours, the remaining evil energy of the zombies in the wound had dissipated by nearly 80%, resulting in very little evil energy extracted by the evil gathering talisman. Therefore, he was very worried about the soul-calling talisman in advance, and ultimately failed to successfully lock the real hiding place of the zombie. Fortunately, through the rune changes of the soul-calling talisman, although the real hiding place of the zombie was not found in the end, the approximate range of the hiding place was locked, which was the Women and Children's Hospital in front of him. After putting away the soul-calling meeting that consumed most of the energy, he began to carefully observe the feng shui pattern of the hospital in front of him. At the moment when Zhang Fengjai loosened his arms around her waist, a sense of loss inexplicably emerged in his heart, and Wen Lan looked at him with a complicated look. Like the city's affiliated hospitals, the feng shui pattern of the Women and Children's Hospital can only be regarded as average, but because of the special nature of the profession, the wealth and luck of the entire hospital are not inferior to the top feng shui treasures. Zombies are still born from the resentment and bad luck of heaven and earth, and they like to stay in places with strong yin and evil spirits to practice in secret. Therefore, after withdrawing his attention from the hospital's feng shui pattern, he directly mobilized the gray energy of Danshan to open the sky eye, and then began to look for the place with the strongest yin and evil spirits in the hospital. Since it is a specialized hospital for women and children, most of the patients who come for treatment are women and children. Women and children themselves carry a certain amount of yin, which causes the entire hospital to be filled with strong yin. At the same time, with the rapid development of social economy and the impact of Western open culture, young Chinese men and women have completely gotten rid of ideological and ethical constraints and started to enjoy the pleasure of sex between men and women in advance. Although this lifestyle of cohabitation before marriage has gradually become a social trend, it also brings some unavoidable disadvantages, that is, the accidental birth of new life. Because most young men and women who cohabit before marriage are just blindly greedy for psychological and physical release, they have no idea or plan to start a family. Therefore, when faced with a new life that was unexpectedly conceived, they could only choose to kill it in advance. But the birth of each new life corresponds to a soul that needs to be reincarnated. When the soul loses the opportunity to be reincarnated, it will produce great resentment and evil spirits, which also causes the entire hospital to be filled with very strong evil spirits, bad luck, and resentment. Although he already understood why the zombie chose the Women and Children's Hospital as a place to cultivate, the overly strong evil spirit, bad luck, and resentment in the hospital also made him lose the opportunity to further lock the zombie's hiding place. Fortunately, he had anticipated the emergence of this situation in advance and had prepared means to continue to look for the zombie in advance. "Miss Wenlin, follow me." After turning his head and greeting Wenlan, Zhang Fengjai went straight to the temporary garbage dump behind the second annex building based on the feng shui pattern of the hospital just observed. Wow! Just as he turned the corner of the annex building and stepped into the temporary garbage dump, a pungent stench made Wenlan take off the mask on her face immediately, and then bent over and vomited desperately. Just when he was observing the feng shui pattern of the hospital, Zhang Fengjai had already seen the turbid gas emanating from the temporary garbage dump, so he was not affected by the stench at all because he held his breath in advance. However, when he heard Wen Yan's extremely painful vomiting sound behind him, he realized that because of his negligence, the other party was attacked by the foul smell without any psychological preparation, and a trace of guilt flashed in his eyes. Then, when he turned around and prepared to use the acupuncture point sealing technique to block Wen Yan's sense of smell to prevent her from continuing to be attacked by the foul smell, he unexpectedly saw Wenlan taking off her mask and revealing her true face. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 546. In the temporary garbage dump of the Women and Children's Hospital. If Sulizi's beauty is charming, Shenloxi's beauty is noble, Zhuang Jian's beauty is sexy, and Xiao Yuxuan's beauty is cold and beautiful. Then, Wenlan, who showed her true face, is a peerless beauty who combines charm, nobility, sexiness, and coldness. If Shangguan's Heining's beauty is better than her elegant and refined temperament, then, Wen Yan's beauty is better than her flawless face. Especially her rosy lips like Dangxia, which gives people a strong temptation to taste. Fi Yiyan has no concern for her willow waist, and Yahuan has no obstruction to the lychee bridge. But the history has been revised for thousands of years, and the harm to the country and the people is all female demons. Looking at Wenlan, who stretched out her delicate jade hand to pat her chest to suppress the feeling of vomiting, and her face was slightly pale, Zhang Fengjai suddenly thought of a poem that would be sighed for thousands of years. Fortunately, with the hidden dangers of the Hunyuan taking heart method completely eliminated, he was able to quickly dispel the shock and admiration brought by Wen Yan's beauty. Then, he walked to Wen Yan's side and used the acupuncture point sealing technique to close her sense of smell. With the closure of her sense of smell, Wenlan, who was no longer affected by the stench, stood up with a ruddy face, and looked up at him with an increasingly complicated look. Because the physiognomy that was as fast as the wind constantly impacted her beliefs that she had always adhered to, and also aroused her very strong interest. Now, he used the acupuncture method described in martial arts novels, which gradually cracked her beliefs, and her interest slowly turned into curiosity. As the saying goes, curiosity kills the cat. What Wenlan didn't realize was that the moment her interest turned into curiosity was the beginning of her sinking. Without noticing the complex look in Wenlan's eyes, Zhang Fengjai used his open eyes to carefully observe the environment of the temporary garbage dump, then took out 4 evil-breaking talismans, 2 soul-soothing talismans and 1 thunder talisman from his sleeves, and then pasted the 4 evil-breaking talismans and 4 evil-breaking talismans on all sides of the garbage dump. Then, he cut his finger and squeezed out a drop of blood, then used the palm wine to crush the blood to form a layer of light blood mist, and then covered the entire garbage dump. Then, he flashed back to Wenlan's side, handed one of the soul-soothing talismans to Wenlan and told her, "Miss Wenlan, this is a talisman that can restrain zombies. As long as you hold this talisman in your hand, the zombie will not dare to approach you easily." Although he still didn't believe in the existence of zombies in this world, facing Zhang Fengjai's concern, Wenlan, who reached out to take the talisman, said with a hint of tenderness in his eyes, "Zhang Fengjai, thank you." "You're welcome." After a casual polite remark, Zhang Fengjai quickly turned around and stared at the garbage dump, waiting for the zombie to appear, with a trace of guilt in his eyes. In fact, Wen Lan, who was protected by a rich purple aura, would never dare to provoke her easily as long as she did not deliberately provoke or actively seduce her. However, before knowing the exact origin of the zombie, he needed to extract the rich purple aura that protected Wen Lan as the first choice to deal with the zombie. Then, Wen Lan, who temporarily lost the protection of the purple aura, could fall into fatal danger at any time. And as the culprit, he would feel guilty. As the blood mist containing gray energy began to fall into every corner of the garbage dump, a low and violent roar could be heard faintly in the originally silent garbage dump. "Miss Wenlin, be careful." When Zhang Fengjai heard the familiar roar, he warned Wenlin with a serious look, and quickly mobilized the gray energy in his dantian to condense a gray sword. The perfect physiognomy, the speed as fast as the wind, the acupuncture to close the sense of smell, and the ingenious talisman paper. Watching Zhang Fengjai condense the gray sword out of thin air again, the curiosity in Wenlin's eyes became stronger, and the speed of sinking began to accelerate. Boom! As the low roar became louder and louder, the pile of blood-stained bandages in the corner of the east side of the garbage dump were suddenly blasted open. Immediately afterwards, a monster nearly 2 meters tall, with an extremely ugly appearance, covered with hair, and a body in orange and green colors, rushed out from the blasted bandages, staring at Zhang Fengjai, and a strong murderous aura gradually surged from his body. Really, there are zombies. When Wen Lan saw the ugly monsters that sprang out of the garbage dump, which were exactly the same as the zombies in movies and TV dramas, the zombies described in online novels, and the zombies described in folk legends, he was completely convinced by Zhang Fengjai, but because of the fear that suddenly emerged in his heart, he couldn't even express his exclamation clearly. Ignoring Wen Yian's stuttering exclamation, Zhang Fengjai looked at the zombie staring at him with an unbelievable look in his eyes. Although the body and appearance will change greatly after the transformation of the zombie pill, the most basic outline and some innate physical characteristics will still be retained. A standard square face, a birthmark between the eyebrows, and a black mole on the lower left side of the lip. The physical characteristics of the zombie in front of him were obviously the male zombie he had encountered in the tea house of King Xinju some time ago. That is Dong Sun Hai, the person in charge of the Supernatural Research Institute arranged in Zhezhou City, who was later transformed into a zombie by Zhao Zolin using the zombie pill. However, he clearly remembered that he had used the sword technique of the stars and the moon to rescue Zhao Yuqian and completely killed Dong Sun Hai. So, how did Dong Sun Hai revive again, and how did his strength improve so rapidly that he was about to be promoted to the level of green zombie? As a zombie born from the resentment and bad luck of heaven and earth, he is not only extremely sensitive to blood, but also born with a strong revenge mentality. Seeing the thin boy in front of him, not only did he have blood in his body that could allow him to successfully upgrade to the level of green zombie, but he also almost killed himself. The desire for blood to assist in the promotion and the anger for revenge made Dong Sun Hai immediately raise his hard arms and jump up with his toes. As a being about to be promoted to green zombie, he is not only extremely powerful, but also has sharp nails as sharp as a magic weapon, and he is agile and jumps like flying. So, at the moment when Dong Sun Hai just raised his legs, the sharp nails of his 10 fingers had reached his chest. Facing the sharp nails that were about to pierce his chest, Zhang Fengjai quickly suppressed his inner doubts, leaned back without panic, and then stabbed the sword in his left hand directly into the heart, which was the source of Dong Sun Hai's power. The soul-calming talisman in his right hand was directly attached to the center of the eyebrows of Dong Sun Hai's resentful soul. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 547. In the temporary garbage dump of the Women and Children's Hospital. With his physical defense that was about to be upgraded to the green zombie level, Dong Sun Hai was not afraid of the gray sword piercing his heart. But facing the soul-suppressing talisman that could restrain and suppress the resentful souls in the sea of consciousness and limit his actions, He quickly retreated and dodged with a flash of fear in his eyes. When he saw that the soul-suppressing talisman found on Zhao Zolin had a strong deterrent effect on Dong Sunhai, who was about to be upgraded to the green zombie level, Zhang Fengjai, with a flash of joy in his eyes, immediately used the Qingfeng step to approach the opponent. Then, he used the absolute advantage of the soul-suppressing talisman to restrain the opponent's resentful souls, and while suppressing the opponent's attack with all his strength, he used the swordsmanship of the grey sword in his hand to continuously pierce the opponent's vital points. But unfortunately, after more than a dozen moves, he found that whether he used the grey energy of the 100% of the Danshan or the Qinkan swordsmanship taught by his third grandfather, he could not break through Dong Sunhai's physical defense that was comparable to a magic weapon. Starry Sky. Since he couldn't kill Dong Sunhai with his own strength, he could only use the trump card he had prepared in advance. So, Zhang Fengjai quickly used a group attack sword technique, and forced Dong Sunhai back more than 10 meters. He immediately dispersed the sharp sword condensed by the grey energy, put away the Black Thunder talisman that he had been holding in his hand, and then began to quickly condense the secret seal with his 10 fingers. Yaoji Jade Cave open. When the seal condensed in his hand was completely formed, Zhang Fengjai shouted loudly and turned around and flicked the seal in his hand towards Wen Lan. Perhaps because of Zhang Fengjai's act of giving the soul-soothing talisman in advance, or perhaps because of the trust after the complete collapse of faith, Wen Lan did not question Zhang Fengjai's inexplicable turn and the act of flicking his fingers at herself, nor did she dodge. As the seal merged into Wen Yan's body protecting purple air, the originally rich purple air quickly condensed together, and at the same time, the purple air gradually emerged from the state of nothingness. Seeing the purple gas emerging around her, and feeling the sense of security it brought, Wen Lan looked at Zhang Fengjai with shock and curiosity, which was gradually replaced by tenderness. Because in her opinion, the purple gas emerging around her was a special method used by Zhang Fengjai to protect herself, and she was not aware of the real source of the purple gas. When the purple gas in its true state floated above Wen Yan's head, Zhang Fengjai also bounced the second condensed mark towards the purple gas while shouting loudly. The dark purple gas comes from the east. Accompanied by the hoarse shouting, the purple gas integrated into the mark began to churn and stretch, and soon condensed into a middle-aged man with a height of more than 1.8 meters, wearing a battle robe, holding a sharp sword, and a slightly elegant temperament. Perhaps because Zhang Fengjai was not proficient in the secret method he used, or perhaps because the concentration of the purple gas was not solid enough, the middle-aged man who was finally formed not only had a slightly dim body, but also had blurred facial features. However, when Dong Sunhai, who was about to continue the attack, saw the middle-aged man condensed from the purple gas, a trace of fear suddenly flashed in his orange eyes, and then he gave up the attack without hesitation and turned around to run away. Because the purple gas that protects Wenlan comes from the blessing of her fiancé's family, and is not a direct descendant, even with the condensation and blessing of special secret methods, the attack power that the middle-aged man can exert is only infinitely close to the virtual Dan realm. As a powerful existence that is about to be promoted to the green zombie, Dong Sunhai, whose strength is infinitely close to the virtual Dan realm, not only has the ability to resist the damage of purple gas, but also has a physical defense comparable to a magic weapon, which can basically confront the attack of the middle-aged man head-on. Therefore, when Zhang Fengjai saw Dong Sunhai turning around and running away without hesitation, he immediately realized that he either did not have a comprehensive understanding of the protection of purple gas, or the middle-aged man condensed from purple gas had a very special origin. However, considering that the middle-aged man condensed from purple gas needs a little time to accumulate power before he can launch the strongest attack. Therefore, Zhang Fengjai immediately suppressed his thoughts, and began to block Dong Sunhai from leaving with the soul-calming talisman in his hand, using the Qingfeng step and the martial arts palm technique. Feeling that the middle-aged man condensed by the purple gas behind him was using a powerful attack that was enough to blast open his own strong physical defense and wipe out the 7 souls bound by resentment in the sea of consciousness, Dong Sun Hai, with a fierce light in his eyes, directly spit out a mouthful of emerald green gas. At the same time, the green on Dong Sun Hai's body was quickly replaced by orange, and his breath dropped slightly. At the moment when Dong Sun Hai spit out the emerald green gas, Zhang Fengjai felt the soul-calming talisman in his hand suddenly tremble, and then forcibly shook off the palm holding it, and flew directly towards the emerald green gas. Boom! Just as the soul-calming talisman just touched the emerald green gas, the soul-calming talisman immediately burned automatically. As the soul-calming talisman burned, the emerald green gas also began to gradually decrease, and finally both completely disappeared. Seeing the enemy in front of him and losing the means to control the resentful soul in his sea of consciousness, Dong Sun Hai roared excitedly, then rushed in front of Zhang Fengjai on tiptoe, and his sharp nails pierced directly into his heart. Although Zhang Fengjai was slightly surprised by Dong Sun Hai's method of consuming the zombie's original power and destroying the soul-suppressing talisman, he sneered with a slight smile when facing Dong Sun Hai's self-righteous attack, and took out an identical soul-suppressing talisman from his sleeve again. The speed of attack was fast, and the speed of retreat was even faster. Just when Zhang Fengjai took out the soul-suppressing talisman, Dong Sun Hai retreated quickly like lightning, and a look of despair gradually emerged in his eyes. When he felt that the middle-aged man condensed by the purple gas behind him was about to complete the charge of the attack, the look of despair in his eyes was gradually replaced by madness. Crack, crack. Accompanied by a series of crisp breaking sounds, Dong Sun Hai's straight arms were forcibly bent, and then the sharp fingers and nails pierced directly into the heart. When Dong Sun Hai slowly pulled out the fingers that pierced into the heart, there was a drop of emerald green blood on each of the sharp nails. At the same time, the fierce aura emanating from Dong Sun Hai also dropped directly from being infinitely close to the void pill realm to the early stage of the 9th level of the foundation establishment stage. Hiss. Dong Sun Hai, not caring about the drop in his own aura, directly flicked the emerald green blood on his nails into the air, and then let out a series of piercing and creepy roars. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 548. In the temporary garbage dump of the Women and Children's Hospital. Accompanied by Dong Sun Hai's roar, among the 10 drops of emerald green blood that were thrown into the air, 8 of them flew to the 8 directions of the garbage dump, and the remaining 2 were respectively integrated into the ground and floated in the air. Then, Dong Sun Hai's body shook slightly, and the 10 sharp nails forcibly separated from his fingers and directly stabbed the 10 drops of emerald green blood in the 10 directions. Bang, bang, bang. Puff. Accompanied by 9 broken and 1 piercing sounds, the 10 completely shattered nails and 10 drops of blood eventually formed a sea of emerald green blood. The annex building near the temporary garbage dump is the nursing building of the Women and Children's Hospital, which is mainly for postpartum recovery, acupuncture and cold exorcism, and psychological treatment for pregnant women. Ding Huiying, who is known as the most beautiful hospital flower of the Women and Children's Hospital, likes to stand in front of the windowsill and enjoy the different scenery outside the window after work. After sending off a pregnant woman who was worried about her body shape and eventually affected her husband and wife's relationship because of childbirth, Ding Huiying stretched and walked to the windowsill. When she was planning to appreciate the bird park near the hospital to relieve her tired body and spirit, she unexpectedly saw a pleasing green color suddenly appear in the temporary garbage dump downstairs. Since Ding Huiying's office was on the 6th floor, more than 20 meters away from the temporary garbage dump, the green color she saw was not very clear. So, she mistakenly thought that the green color she saw was the green plants bought by the hospital to transform the temporary garbage dump, or the green plastic sheet used to cover the garbage. When she thought about the 5 years of internship and work, she couldn't open the window to absorb fresh air because of the foul smell generated in the temporary garbage dump, the excitement and joy that suddenly emerged in her heart made her reach out and push open the window. At the moment the window was pushed open, the imagined foul smell not only did not completely disappear, but became more pungent and spicy, and even had a rotten smell of corpses. After closing the window without any hesitation, Ding Huiying looked at the spring green downstairs through the glass, with a look of doubt in her eyes. However, the look of doubt did not last too long. Ding Huiying turned back to her desk, took out the telescope she usually used to appreciate the distant scenery from the drawer, and began to carefully observe the true source of the green downstairs. Not good. Just as the 10 shattered nails and 10 drops of blood formed a green sea of blood, Zhang Fengjai, whose face suddenly changed, immediately flashed to the side of Wen Lan, and then mobilized the gray energy to form a layer of defense shield to isolate the corrosion of the green sea of blood. At the same time, the soul-suppressing talisman affected by the breath of the sea of blood began to become damp, and the runes began to become blurred, which forced him to quickly put away the soul-suppressing talisman. Zhang Fengjai, thank you. The help at the critical moment proved that the other party was always thinking about him. So, when he saw Zhang Fengjai, who had returned to his side in an instant, using special means to shield the damage of the emerald sea of blood, the only trace of curiosity in his eyes was completely replaced by tenderness. Wen Lan, who covered up her slightly sexy outfit, thanked him in a soft tone. You're welcome. Without noticing the change in Wen Yan's tone and the move to restrain her sexy outfit, Zhang Fengjai said a casual polite word and quickly used the open sky eye to carefully observe the situation in the emerald sea of blood. Fortunately, the emerald green color formed by the sea of blood, although it blocked his eyes, could not block the attention of the sky eye, allowing him to clearly see Dong Sunhai's every move in the sea of blood. At this time, Dong Sunhai, whose aura had fallen to the early 9th level of the foundation building period, jumped high with his toes supporting the ground, and rushed straight to the middle-aged man above Wen Lan. At this moment, the middle-aged man, who had completed the attack and accumulated power, swung the sword in his hand and chopped out a white sword energy, directly slashing at Dong Sunhai who was rushing towards him. Seeing Dong Sunhai leaping high, he led 1/3 of the blood sea water to form a layer of defense. Seeing the white sword energy slashed by the middle-aged man was blocked and weakened by 1/3 of the blood sea water. Zhang Fengjai frowned tightly, with a trace of worry in his eyes. Although he didn't know what secret method Dong Sunhai had just performed, he knew that the emerald green water of the blood sea could not only make Dong Sunhai return to the peak level of strength, but also weaken the attack of the middle-aged man through the heavy pressure brought to him by the blood sea. Therefore, in order to avoid unexpected accidents, Zhang Fengjai quickly mobilized the gray energy of Danshan and prepared to drive the Suan Li Fu at any time. Boom! Although there was a 1/3 of emerald green blood water blocking and weakening, the power of the white sword energy, which was infinitely close to the virtual Dan realm, finally broke through the obstruction of the blood water and slashed heavily on Dong Sunhai. With a strong roar, the white sword energy broke through Dong Sunhai's physical defense, but was weakened and blocked by the emerald green sea water, and finally only cut off Dong Sunhai's left arm and half of his head. For Dong Sunhai, who was about to be promoted to the green zombie level, losing his left arm and half of his head would only weaken his strength and would not cause fatal damage. Moreover, as long as he swallowed enough blood afterwards, he could completely grow new arms and heads. So, seeing the completely disappeared middle-aged man and the completely shattered white sword energy, Dong Sunhai, who had a glimmer of relief in his eyes, landed steadily on the ground, and immediately turned around and jumped to escape with the cover of the emerald sea of blood. Stars and dots. It was obvious that with the help of the emerald sea of blood, he could have an absolute advantage in the next fierce battle, but he turned around and escaped without hesitation. This made Zhang Fengjai immediately realize that Dong Sunhai's condition was far worse than he had imagined. So, while he immediately put away the Xian Lei Fu, he quickly used the gray energy to condense a gray sword, and then immediately used the fastest swordsmanship to block Dong Sunhai's escape. Consuming 2/3 of the blood sea water, the emerald green color of the blood sea quickly became thinner, and it was no longer possible to completely block the attention of the eyes. This also allowed Ding Huiying, who was using a high-power telescope, to clearly see the scene in the blood sea. When she saw Wenlan standing on the east side of the blood sea, Ding Huiying first looked down at her breasts, which she had always been proud of, with a jealous look in her eyes, and then she touched her cheek with her free right hand, and the jealous look in her eyes was gradually replaced by envy. When she saw Zhang Fengjai holding a grey sword out of thin air, the envy in Ding Huiying's eyes was immediately replaced by curiosity. It was because of her inner curiosity that she couldn't help but continue to observe in the direction pointed by the sword tip. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 549. In the temporary garbage dump of the Women and Children's Hospital. Orange body and hair, sharp fangs sticking out of the corners of the mouth, missing left arm and half of a small head. When she saw the ugly monster in the high-power telescope, the infinite fear that suddenly emerged in her heart made Ding Huiying step back several steps and fall directly to the ground. Her face was as pale as paper, and her eyes showed an unbelievable look. Like Wenlan, who likes online literature, Ding Huiying, who usually uses fantasy and fairy tales to pass the time during breaks, soon thought of the ugly monster that just appeared in the high-power telescope, which looked very much like the zombies described in fantasy and fairy tales. Like Wenlan, who is very courageous, Ding Huiying, who has also experienced the observation and tempering of different corpses, quickly suppressed the infinite fear that emerged in her heart after continuous deep breathing. But unlike Wenlan, a special experience some time ago almost destroyed the belief she had always adhered to, allowing her to quickly accept some seemingly absurd legends. So, she quickly got up and returned to the windowsill, and continued to use the high-power telescope to verify whether she had just seen something. Once, with just one powerful jump, she could jump over the wall of the temporary garbage dump, and then escape smoothly with the help of the complex terrain behind the wall. However, the overdrawn original energy and blood essence of the second secret method, as well as the fight with the ancient war god condensed by purple gas, caused the loss of arms and half of the head, which not only made its strength fall directly to the early 8th level of the foundation building period, but also weakened its physical defense to the level of ordinary soldiers. Therefore, facing the invisible sword energy with a power reaching the peak of the 8th level of the foundation building period, and facing the attack that could easily tear the zombie's physical defense, Dong Sunhai could only temporarily give up the idea of escaping. Then, it turned around and mobilized the remaining 1/3 of the emerald green blood to form a blood wave defense to resist the invisible sword energy. There are indeed zombies in this world. As the emerald green blood completely disappeared, Ding Huiying, who could see Dong Sunhai's appearance more clearly, said to herself with a hint of excitement in anticipation. Originally, the blood wave defense formed by 1/3 of emerald green blood water was powerful enough to reach the peak of the 9th level of the foundation building period. However, due to the sharp decline in Dong Sunhai's own strength, the power of the blood wave defense dropped to the early 9th level of the foundation building period. Therefore, the invisible sword energy formed by the star-pointed sword technique successfully tore through the blood wave defense. However, it was also limited by the power of the sword technique and the inability to mobilize more gray energy in the Danshan when it was hasty. Therefore, after the invisible sword energy tore through the blood wave defense, it completely disappeared because the energy was exhausted, and it did not hurt Dong Sunhai at all. In this regard, Zhang Fengjai was not disappointed at all. Instead, he showed an extremely excited look in his eyes and directly mobilized the 100% gray energy in the Danshan to perform 3 consecutive sword techniques. Stars and moon shine together. 3 stars shine brightly. Stars are scattered all over the place. The two tangible sword energies formed by the star-pointed sword technique directly destroyed the blood wave formed by the emerald green blood water. The three visible sword chi formed by the three stars directly tore through the zombie's strong physical defense. The 36 invisible sword chi formed by the stars directly crushed Dong Sun Hai's heart and sea of consciousness, destroying the source of power and the seven souls bound by resentment. Bang! Dong Sun Hai, who lost his source of power and the evil spirit, fell heavily to the ground. While his breath quickly fell to that of an ordinary person, his orange hair quickly fell off, his orange skin quickly turned yellow, and the fangs protruding from the corners of his mouth quickly retracted. 3 seconds later, the ugly and ferocious zombie gradually turned into a handsome young man. Seeing that Dong Sun Hai, who had regained his original appearance, still had a glimmer of life, Zhang Fengjai quickly dispersed the grey sword in his hand, flashed to his side, and then asked him why he was able to revive and his strength improved by leaps and bounds. Whether it is the ugly and ferocious appearance, the means of sucking blood to become stronger, or the violent consciousness of losing oneself, the cruel and bloodthirsty character, and the dangerous situation that may be killed at any time, all make every cultivator who sets foot on the heaven-defying practice instinctively hate and refuse to become a zombie. If it were not for the resentment that bound the consciousness of the seven souls and could not control the body independently, any cultivator who was forcibly transformed into a zombie by the zombie pill would choose the means of self-destruction to end his zombie life. Therefore, Dong Sun Hai, who had restored his original appearance, faced the fate of falling to death, not only did not have any thoughts of hating Zhang Fengjai, but was very grateful to Zhang Fengjai for helping him get rid of the zombie form. It was precisely because his heart was full of infinite gratitude that he explained everything he knew in detail in the face of Zhang Fengjai's questioning. When Zhang Fengjai heard that the reason why Dong Sun Hai was able to revive and his strength improved by leaps and bounds was that he accidentally sucked the blood of Yan Shuhao and Zhao Zolin, a look of astonishment flashed in his eyes. Because he really didn't expect that the collapse of King Xinjia tea house would not only fail to bury Dong Sun Hai, who was fatally injured, but also give him a chance to be reborn. But in addition to being shocked, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Since Dong Sun Hai's resurrection had nothing to do with the core disciples of Lishan sect, it meant that he would not only be very safe in the future, but also have enough time and energy to use the rearranged Hunyuan taking heart method, combined with Xianyuan pills, dragon crystals, and spirit pastes, to quickly improve his own cultivation and strength. In this way, when the core disciples of Lishan sect come to retaliate, he will be able to deal with the core disciples of Lishan sect who have reached the 9th level of the foundation building period without using his life-saving trump card. However, when he heard that Dong Sun Hai, who had been resurrected, had sucked the blood of 13 innocent girls in less than 2 days in order to reach the green zombie level as soon as possible, he showed a look of self-blame in his eyes. If he had directly cut Yan Shuhao and Zhao Zolin into pieces during the fierce battle in the tea house, he would not have given Dong Sun Hai any chance to revive. After the collapse of the tea house, if he had stopped and used his mind to check the ruins of the tea house, he would have been able to find Dong Sun Hai, who had just resurrected in the ruins. If he had killed Dong Sun Hai in time, the series of tragedies that followed would not have happened. Therefore, the murder of the 13 innocent girls was caused by his carelessness, and he should bear at least half of the responsibility for the tragic deaths of the 13 girls. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Fengjai took out his phone from his clothes, found Yang Guoshan's number, and called it directly. After telling Yang Guosheng that the murderer of the girl was indeed a zombie and that he had successfully killed it, he continued to tell the other party the whereabouts of the bodies of the other 12 murdered girls, and urged Yang Guosheng to find out the specific identities and origins of the 13 girls as soon as possible. Because he hoped to alleviate the psychological guilt brought by responsibility by compensating the relatives of the 13 girls. The Best Physiognomist. Author, Yan Yun Yuqi. Chapter 550. In the temporary garbage dump of the Women and Children's Hospital. When Wenlan saw the ugly zombie killed by Zhang Fengjai slowly turned into a handsome young man, Her inner fear was gradually replaced by curiosity, and she walked to him carefully. Then, she carefully looked at Dong Sun Hai's body. When she noticed the sharp fangs retracted in her mouth and the orange hair falling all over the ground, a bold idea suddenly flashed through her mind, and then she asked with nervousness and expectation in her eyes. Zhang Fengjai, can you send this body to the autopsy room of the criminal police team? Guessing Wen Yan's intention to take the initiative to ask for Dong Sun Hai's body, Zhang Fengjai put away the self-blaming look in his eyes and stood up, then took out a fire talisman from his sleeve. Then, he used the grey energy in his dantian to drive the fire talisman to self-ignite, and threw it directly on Dong Sun Hai's body. Boom! The talisman flame instantly covered the body and burned quickly. After withdrawing his gaze from the flames of the spell burning the corpse, Zhang Fengjai turned around and looked at Wen Lan, who had a look of dissatisfaction on his face, and reminded her with a very serious face. Miss Wen Lan, although this corpse seems to have completely gotten rid of the influence of the zombie form, in fact, there is still a lot of zombie poison remaining in his body. If you accidentally get a trace of corpse poison during the dissection process, then in a short day or a long 3 days, you will become a zombie monster exactly like him. At that time, in order to prevent you from killing innocent people and creating a bloody case, I can only ruthlessly kill you. Zi. When Wen Lan heard Zhang Fengjai's seemingly serious reminder, which was actually a naked warning, she couldn't help but take a breath, and the dissatisfaction on her face was instantly replaced by fear. In fact, taking the initiative to ask Zhang Fengjai for Dong Sun Hai's body, she hoped to learn more about Dong Sun Hai, who had been transformed into a zombie, through the means of dissecting the body, whether his flesh, blood vessels, bones and internal organs were different from those of ordinary humans. If there is an essential difference, can the strength and speed of ordinary people be enhanced through different structures? But during the autopsy process, she will inevitably come into direct contact with flesh, blood vessels, bones and internal organs. Recalling the green blood that Dong Sun Hai took out from the heart, it can easily corrode the stainless steel medical equipment in the garbage dump. Then, the leather gloves that can barely protect the palms will become completely useless in the face of highly corrosive blood. Looking at the handsome corpse in front of him, recalling the ugly appearance and brutal form of the corpse before it left the zombie state, fortunately replaced the frightened Wen Lan in an instant, and hurriedly apologized and thanked him solemnly. Zhang Fengjai, I'm sorry, I was too reckless and greedy just now, and thank you for stopping and reminding me in time, otherwise, I would have caused a huge disaster. Miss Wenlan, you're welcome, this is what I should do. After a casual polite remark, Zhang Fengjai turned his head to look at the corpse burned by the talisman fire, with a complicated look in his eyes. In fact, judging from the experience of removing the corpse poison in Zhao Yuqian's body, the reason why Dong Sun Hai was able to get rid of the zombie state was entirely because of the transformation of his corpse poison, which had completely dissipated with the loss of vitality. Even if Wenlan dissected his body with her own hands, even if the blood splashed all over her during the dissection process, it would not cause any harm, let alone transform into an ugly zombie. The reason why she used lies to deceive Wenlan and prevented her from dissecting and studying Dong Sun Hai's body was completely out of respect for Dong Sun Hai's identity as a monk. Whether it was an orthodox Taoist monk or an evil cultivator of a side door. No matter what their original intention of practicing was, and what benefits they wanted to get through practicing in the end, the moment they set foot on practicing, they were knowledgeable people who went against the will of heaven. They could fight each other for the competition of practice resources, fight to the death for grievances and hatreds, and even destroy the corpses for personal desires. But ordinary people must never be allowed to defile, humiliate, or study their bodies after death. Therefore, even if Wenlan had helped him, he could not allow the other party to dissect and study Dong Sun Hai's body. When Dong Sun Hai's body was completely burned to ashes by the talisman flame, Zhang Fengjai turned back and proposed to Wen Lan. Miss Wen Lan, since the murderer has been brought to justice, let's return to the police force as soon as possible. Okay. Whether it was the strong impact of the zombies on her beliefs or the influence of her secret feelings on her emotions, Wenlan felt a little uneasy and wanted to think quietly. So, facing Zhang Fenjai's proposal, Wenlan nodded and agreed without hesitation. When he turned around and walked away from the temporary garbage dump, Zhang Fenjai looked up at a piece of reflective glass in the middle of the 6th floor of the annex building, then stretched out his left index finger to his mouth, making a gesture of silence. Then, he waved with a smile on his face, and then took Wenlan away from the garbage dump quickly and headed straight for the gate of the Women and Children's Hospital. Ding Huiying slowly put down the high-power telescope, clenched her fists excitedly, and a hint of anticipation flashed in her eyes. Because Zhang Fenjai's expression and gesture of smiling and waving goodbye when leaving the temporary garbage dump suddenly reminded her of the scene when she went to Xintang building to play with her girlfriends some time ago, and happened to see Zhang Fenjai transforming into a goshawk out of thin air to rescue Wang Huanshan. The means of transforming into a flying bird out of thin air, the goshawk, which was like a hill, landed smoothly at a height of nearly 10 meters. It was witnessing the scene beyond scientific common sense that made her beliefs that she had always adhered to appear countless cracks, and she could accept the existence of zombies in the shortest time. Therefore, when she recognized Zhang Fenjai's identity, she was so excited and expectant. Because of the special experience of transforming into a goshawk and a zombie, she realized that many diseases that cannot be explained and solved by medicine may be solved and treated through mysterious metaphysics. In the past, although she had the idea of asking for verification, she suffered from no intersection between them, and she had no reason and was embarrassed to ask for advice. Now, as an acquaintance who needs to keep secrets and wave goodbye with a smile, she can use this excuse to visit. After taking a deep breath and forcibly suppressing the excitement in her heart, Ding Huiying rushed to the desk and picked up her mobile phone, then contacted her best friend who worked in Xintang building to further inquire about Zhang Fenjai's situation and preferences, and prepare for the next visit.